From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Hunaina Sultan al-Mughayri, Dr. Saeed bin Nasser Alsalmi, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And thank you all for coming today, despite the gray weather. I'm Mary Jane Deeb, Chief of the African Middle East Division of the Library of Congress, that's co-sponsoring this conference with the Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center. And I will be your host today. Unfortunately, Mark Sweeney, the acting deputy librarian, could not be with us as he had to travel to Egypt to visit our Cairo office. But first, I would like to thank the executive director of the Sultan Qaboos Center, Kathleen Ridolfo, whom I have known for more than 2 decades, and without whom this conference would not have been possible. I also want to recognize Harrison Guthorn, the Senior Program Officer at the Center, for coordinating this event and ensuring that the wonderful scholars you will hear from today made it to Washington. I want to recognize the work of my own team, especially Joan Weeks, the head of the Near East section, who, among the many other things she's done, she has organized a wonderful book display in our conference room that you'll be able to see during the break. I want to thank Wanda Cartwright from Special Events, who was in charge of logistics and coordinating the arrangements in the room, the sound system, the webcasting, the videotaping, the catering. An event like this takes a village, as the saying goes, to put together. So a word about why we are holding this conference. First, this is the first major conference on Omani archaeology ever held at the Library of Congress. So it's a first. We like first. The library always likes to be first in doing something. It is part of an annual series that I started many years ago on the ancient civilizations of the Middle East. That included the ancient Sasanians of Persia, the Phoenicians, and the ancient city of Tyre, the ancient Assyrians, the Druze, and many others. And in June, we'll be holding a conference on the history of the Armenians. The purpose is to give depth and breadth to the region of the Middle East and to highlight the creativity, richness, and complexity of a part of the world that was, for millennia, the cradle of world civilizations. It is also to entice you all to come back to the library, to our division, among others, to explore our collections and discover on your own more about these great civilizations. The top scholars we invite to share with us their research are the ones who will cast a spell on you and bring you back to read their books and those of others here at the library. And now, I would like to introduce Her Excellency, Hunaina Sultan al-Mughayri, the Ambassador of Oman, who has been such a staunch supporter of this project and many others from the get-go, and who will say a few words and introduce the keynote speaker. Her Excellency was appointed as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Sultanate of Oman to the United States of America on December the 2nd, 2005. She also serves as chair of the Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center's Board of Oversight. Ambassador al-Mughayri is an economist with an extensive business background. She's a strong advocate for the US-Oman Free Trade Agreement and has focused much of her energy on improving relations between the US and Oman. Prior to her work in diplomacy, she served many roles in Oman's Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the Omani Center for Investment, Promotion, and Export Development. Ambassador al-Mughayri obtained a BA in Business Communications from the High Polytechnic Institute in Cairo and an MA in Economics from New York University. Please let us welcome Ambassador Mughayri.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dr. Deeb, Dr. Salmi, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As chair of the Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you this morning for this very special event on archaeological discoveries in the Sultanate of Oman. Today, we will travel from the northern Batna Governorate to Dhahira and Dhofar and examine the ways in which ancient Oman served as a crossroads for culture and exchange. As you listen to our distinguished guests and panelists discuss their research, I hope you will come to see the Sultanate as we do, a rich and vibrant cultural hub that welcomes exchange and interaction with its neighbors and indeed the global world. For, as we will see, even in ancient times, Oman was at the forefront of the exchange and innovation. Our last panel of the day will transport us to the present, where we will hear about the Sultanate's efforts towards the conscientious preservation of the cultural sites in Oman. Such efforts enable us to maintain these treasures while sharing them with visitors from around the world. The Sultanate is home to 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including the Land of Frankincense, which includes the ancient ports of Hor Rori, Al-Balid, and the inland trading post of Shisr, and also Wadi Dhokla. Together, these sites and others serve as a statement to Oman's early settlement and exchange with the world, including the far reaches of Asia. We know, for example, that from Bat, Oman was a major exporter of copper to Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. Artifacts from Al-Balid, including pottery from China, demonstrates the reach of ancient traders along the Silk Route to the sea. I would like to thank our panelists for traveling from near and far to share their experience with us today. The panelists have spent a large part of their careers in Oman. Their work is at the forefront of the archaeological research in the Sultanate. A special thanks goes to Dr. Saeed Alsalmi, who joined us from Muscat as our keynote speaker. I would also like to thank Dr. Mary Jane Deeb and her team at the African and Middle Eastern Division for partnering with SQCC to bring this conference to fruition. Dr. Deeb, we are grateful for your friendship and commitment to education. The Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center was established in 2005. Our mission is a simple one: to educate Americans and Omanis on each other's culture. Through programs such as this, we hope to share not only our history, but our future with you. And last but not least, I would like to thank my team at SQCC, headed by Kathleen Rodolfo, and also my 2 board members, Mohammed Shidani and Dr. Iman, who have traveled all this way to be with us here this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mugheri, and thanks to the board. And now for our keynote speaker, Dr. Saeed bin Nasser Alsalmi. He was appointed as the Director General of the Office of the Advisor to His Majesty the Sultan for Cultural Affairs in June 2012. During this time, he has also worked as the Vice Chairman of ICOMOS, Oman. From 2007 to 2011, he worked as the Director of Administration for Archaeological Sites, the World Heritage Sites of the Land of Frankincense. He is an expert in archaeology. Dr. Alsalmi obtained his PhD in archaeology, management of archaeological sites, from the University of Pisa in Italy. And now I know that you want to hear from him, and he has promised a very exciting presentation.
Good morning. Madam Ambassador, Madam, thank you very much. Board member of Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center, thank you very much for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, some of them we work actually in Oman. My lecture is going to be a little bit different actually. And I managed to do that because I don't want you to get bored from the keynote speaker immediately. You have a lot of papers is coming. This is a floor map of the ancient Near East civilization. This is from Museum of Fine Art in Boston. What you can see there is the most important civilization in the Middle East. What you can see in the Arabian Peninsula, there is only one name exists. Oman always been a focal point in the international trade. You have it from the frankincense trail down from Dhofar all the way to the Red Sea to Europe, or with Koba, with Magan from the 3rd millennium BC all the way to Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley. And by merging both of those trades, you have one of the oldest evidence of a human being or human existence in Arabia. This is how Oman today, with its boundaries, Oman was, in a political way, was bigger than that, getting bigger, getting smaller, but this is how is Oman today. It's still a focal point in the trade, in the international trade, and it's still a focal point in history. This is our masterpiece. This is an axe dated to the 2 million years ago, was found in a Negd in Dhofar. If we go back, I'm sorry. The Negd, I don't have a pointer here. Anyhow, the Negd of Dhofar is between the mountain of Dhofar all the way to Al-Wusta. So all that desert in the middle of Oman, this is the Negd Plateau. 100 of archaeological sites being discovered there. It goes back from 2 million years ago until the first settlement goes to the 10th millennium BC in Kahf Natif in Salalah or in Al-Wutayya in Muscat. Between them, you have site goes to 450,000 years ago, 120,000 years ago, and it's a long list of archaeology. I'm going to give you actually we have 2 sites came up with a very interesting results. It's not been published yet. So I'm going to focus on those 2 sites. Inkitat, it's a part of Al-Humra al-Sharqiyya in Khorruri. Khorruri is a World Heritage Site of the land of frankincense. As Her Excellency the Ambassador mentioned the land of frankincense sites. One of them is Khorruri. 2 years ago, we did a kind of investigation with the Italian mission to Oman from Pisa University, and the discovery was amazing. No, now it's possible. This is Al-Humra al-Sharqiyya. You have a fortified site, give you an evidence from 60,000 BC. This is the first evidence we have it in Salalah on the coastline that it goes back to the 60,000 years ago. Normally, we have most of the site are on the Negd side. Here, you can see the differentiate between the archaeological site and periods. You have from the 60,000, you have from early Neolithic, 6,000, and you have Bronze Age, then you have, we call it medieval, we don't call it Islamic period, actually. This is the site. This is the main gate. It's 100 meters above sea, so you have to climb up. I think some of you like Dr. Krista Lewis, she was there already, she knows that the area. This is the site of the Bronze Age. And this one here is the most circular bronze sites. We find it in Dhofar. Little bit different that we find it on the top of Humra al-Sharqiyya because it's above the sea. This is the oldest occupation that we have it in Khorrori. From there, we believe that they moved down to, and they built some haram. Some haram is from the 5th century BC all the way to the 4th century BC. No, 4th century AD actually. This is the most interesting artifact that for the first time we find them on the coastline of Dhofar, 60,000 years ago. Some of similar objects, you will find them in the Negev Plateau, in the desert, but to have it on the coastline, we have one of the earliest evidence of human presence and occupation in Dhofar. And this is from the Neolithic period, 6,000 years ago. Muthafa site. Muthafa site is little bit, actually I had this conversation with Professor Jeffrey Rose 4 weeks ago before I came back to Oman. No, before I came to Washington. For him, he was looking to this site. And the site is the small valley. It's that thick. He waited for the analysis to come back, and he was shocked because he believed this is not more than 12,000 years ago. The analysis it gave it, this is one of the oldest occupation coming in this area in Muthafa, which is 30,000 years ago. Why is Muthafa it's important for us? It's connected what we believe in our literature with Ad people, that Ad people occupied this area and it's been destroyed by a wind, etc., etc. At the end of this lecture, actually, I have an 8 minutes animation film that will give you the idea how was this area and how it became as a desert. So this is one of the most interesting. This is only 1 month ago, a discovery and analysis. This is the whole plateau. You can see the stratigraphy is a little bit complicated, but you can see the wadis and this trees there. This is the artifact that we find them there. Very small artifacts. The Negev Plateau is one of the most interesting part of Oman, which has a lot of archaeological sites coming from early Neolithic period. And of course, it goes inside Al-Mahra, which is one part of Yemen in this area. This is the area what we believe that Ad people used to live in. And this is the site. After the banishment, they just distributed in small groups, around 20, 25s, and they start to build, or not to build actually, they start to establish their own small settlements around it. And it's continue all the way to Sur. So we have the Al-Ahqaf area from Sur, from Ras al-Had in Sur, all the way down to Ras Farteka in Yemen. The most site that I really been working in was Salut in the north. Salut for us is important of two reasons. It's connected with the legendary of Salman bin Dawood. When he was traveling from Astakhar, he arrived to Salut and he found a palace and it was uninhabited, his story with the eagle, what's happened to the people. And he asked the jinn to construct the falaj. So according to the legend, in 3 days, he constructed something like 30,000 falaj in Oman. Of course, that's the legend. That's why Salud for us important. And we inscribe the word, the falaj in the World Heritage Site according to a discovery actually in Salud, which gave us an evidence that the earliest irrigation channel system in Oman goes back, or in the area actually, to the 3rd millennium BC. This is Salud in 2004. And this is Salud 2017. This is the, we start to tell it qarya as a village, but later on archaeologists tell us this is not a qarya. This is well-advanced system, well-organized, and it's Medinat Salud. Yeah. The site is huge. The site is on the tentative list for World Heritage sites. We started now to establish as an archaeological park. We have already done 2 archaeological parks down in Salalah, one in Al-Balid and one in Khorrori. And recently, last year, and last year, again, we added Shisaru Bar as an archaeological park as well. So this is give you an idea how the importance of Salud. In Salud, we have something like more than 3,000 tombs on the top of the mountains. It's a long process. We believe it's the heart of Oman. This is lead me to the second point, why is Salud important? In the Omani literature as well, it's where Malik bin Fahim defeated Parthians around 1st century AD. And we started with what we call it Arabization of Oman, and Oman become more part of Arabic identity. 2 months ago, we had the Italian mission working in Oman, and we discovered a large cemetery. And within a lot of weapons, a lot of swords. The primary analysis gave us that this is coming to the 1st century AD, which is close to the battle took place with the Parthian. So we might discover what they call it, the tomb of Marzaban. We don't know. Parthian soldiers, we don't know. But this is the Qaryat Salud. Until two years ago, we didn't thought that there is anything underneath. It's just a small wall need to be restored, need to be conserved, and to be drawing, and that's all. Later on, we discovered that we have a complete city close to a castle, goes back to the 3rd millennium BC. A city has all the elements as an administrative and a ruling area for Magan. We believe, I'm not sure about it, but we believe that it might be the capital of Magan, but we are not sure. We are still with analysis, and we will see how it goes. This is one of the tombs. Part of our work is actually to make a kind of a presentation to the public. Public awareness is very important for us. It's very important that they know and understand what we have been doing, because we have always the argument, what's the benefit of archaeology? You are spending money, so what's the benefit? The example, we have it in Khorrori and in Al-Balid, with the visitors, close to 200,000 visitors a year. I think that justifies why we have to concentrate on archaeological parks, why we have to set up this example as an archaeological park in Oman. And actually, recently we managed with US e-commerce and ICAM to pass a recommendation of archaeological park. We call it Salala recommendation on archaeological park. For the first time with e-commerce to approve the term and the concept, the principle of archaeological park. This is one of the tombs. This is the 3rd millennium BC tomb. This is actually on the top of the mountains. Restoration process. Continue. And this is how it to look after it's been restored. This is, it will be amazing to see that people, they go and climb the mountain just to see it. You know, it's not easy to reach to the top of the mountain, but people, they love to see it, especially the local community. They've been there for hundreds of years. They never given attention what's going on. As soon we made few examples of restoration, excavation in the area, we have a lot of demand of people that are coming to asking, what does it mean? How old is this site? What kind of discovery you find there? The area as one had, what we call them is a 3rd millennium BC towers. You find them a lot in the north of Oman, well, we call it Omani Peninsula, which is now Oman and United Arab Emirates. You find them in Healy, you find them in Bat. We believe that a kind of a protection towers been distributed in a certain area of Oman and in a certain area of valleys. And most of them, they have a well inside. So they are more independent and they can collect water. Salut is it's a 200 kilometer inside Oman. So it's on close to Al-Hijr mountain. However, this is a seal from the Indus Valley to show you the trade between Oman and the Indus Valley. It's not on the coastline. And you are talking about the 3rd millennium CC. You are talking about 5,000 years ago that there was a trade established between Salut in the heart of Oman and Indus Valley. We know on those days that already Oman maritime history started with the Magan port from Ras Al Jins all the way to Indus Valley, all the way either to India. But to have those type of seals give you that Salut is very important. There was an administrative structure because seals mean it's a stamp. It's something is a property. You are trying to prove that this is yours. You're trying to establish or to accomplish a deal with someone. So you have a structure of administrative system already exists in Salut. Snakes. We believe that the people of Salut worship snakes, and it's a sign of protection. Recently, with the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, close to Adam, which is another 100 kilometers from Salut, they discover another site, and they have snakes. You have it in bronze, you have it in pottery, you have it as what they call it impressed on the pottery itself. According to the legend of frankincense, the frankincense tree is being protected by flying snakes. We are talking about down in the south, which is something like 1,000 kilometers away. This is a little bit, we had a big argument about it. We discovered 5 completed base for columns. We reconstructed according to UNESCO standards. We tried to adapt the Omani traditional architect, because we have Saruj, We have the columns with the base on the top, and we have the roofs. Close by to Sallut, you have Bahla. Bahla, it goes, the earliest occupation of Bahla, of the Bahla fort, is going to the Sasanian or Parthian, which is, we are talking about around 100 BC. The same technique until now is being used in Oman, with mosques, with forts, and this is the first time that we discover it in the Arabian Peninsula. It has a kind of Nabatean influence. This is again on the top of Sallut. That means you have to climb for half an hour just to get upstairs. I'm going to close my presentation with archaeological parks, because we work very long, very intensive. We started with US Archaeological Park, and they made a wonderful study for us in the 90s. This is Wubar. It was discovered in 1989, then with Trans-Arabia, with Professor Yurizarint. I think Dr. Crystal Lewis participated in the excavation on those days. And the lost city of Wubar, as some people they love to say, to call it. We call it one of the station for the land of frankincense trade, because the land of frankincense trade, you have two routes. The sea routes come from Khoruri to Kana and goes to the Red Sea all the way to Greece, or by land routes goes to Shisar, and from Shisar go to Jibrin inside Saudi Arabia in the empty quarter, and from there to the north. What's the importance of this site is water, because people trade with the local for water. I will summarize everything I said in this 8-film animation. I hope you will like it, because this is part of our interpretation in the archaeological park. We establish information center. People can go, people can be informative, not educated, but informative. They can see what the site looks like, how it was, and the long history of the site, the long process. We spent something like more than 25 years working in Shisar during the time period, from excavation, analysis, restoration, and sometimes we had to get a very professional company just to, if we go back, just to stabilize the cave, because the cave was collapsing. The water level went down, there was a halo, and all this area was collapsed. So we have to stabilize the cave, otherwise we are going to lose the site. This is the disadvantage of to be a World Heritage site, that you have to spend a lot of money in sites, then later on you don't know what to do with it. Can I have the light off? Is possible? It's not? Okay. I hope this is the film summarize how was the Negd plateau. It's 8 minutes. I hope you have patience for that.
Listen. Can't you hear it?
What should we hear, Grandpa?
I cannot hear anything.
Exactly. Great stories are born from silence. The fire makes us tell them, and the stars turn them into legends. I have a story to tell you, the story of how a garden became sand and was split, and how then, after many centuries, has returned to unite and flourish.
Listen, the tale seems mysterious.
A long time ago, Wubar was a garden rich in water, trees and fruits. Travellers that saw it tell of beautiful horses and gazelles, and big palm trees with golden dates where singing birds chased each other. Water flew in great falls, and vast lakes extended where now there is only an expanse of desert. Our ancestors lived a simple life, hunting and cultivating animals, working with tools made of stone.
And then, what happened?
Water began to run out. The rivers and the lakes dried up. Our tradition speaks of a reason for such dramatic climate change in all of the Arabian Peninsula. It was the time of the people of Ad, who built landmarks to indicate the right way to the freshwater springs of their people. They put up 3 upright stones and a 4th to cover them. The cover was the sky, and the upright stones the pillars of the earth, helping it stay up. The people of Ad were rich, but refused to listen to the message of the righteous prophet Hud. Instead of protecting the water, the animals and the plants, they became wicked, conceited, tyrannical and arrogant. The people of Ad became ungrateful and misused the Almighty's blessing. The punishment came. Changing weather stopped the cool rain. The green land became dry. The Almighty sent a wind from the desert, and nature was transformed. For 7 nights and 8 days, the wind blew, hard and relentlessly. Mountains were destroyed, trees uprooted as if they were grains of sand. And the people fell as if they were the hollow trunks of palm trees, except for those who believed in Prophet Hud, peace be upon him, whose tomb is located in the Dhofar Mountains.
A sad end for them and a beginning for the desert.
Did everybody die?
No. Those faithful to Hud's teachings were saved and moved to the west, south and north, from Oman until Hadramaut. Do you recognize this? We still use it.
A line in the sand. A road.
This is the road that linked the south and north of Oman. In the north of Oman, there were other cities. 6,000 years ago, people learned to live together, to write and to build. In Mesopotamia, Syria and Egypt, great realms and empires were formed. So Oman had a part to play at the beginning of history.
And the water?
Our ancestors had to face a dramatic situation and search for water where it was hiding, underground. They dug wells and built canals.
The Aflash?
The Aflash. One of the most daring engineering feats of the ancient world. The plain of Salou near Nizwa was irrigated and rich, and then came the time to defend it. The Persians of Al-Muzaban arrived with a great army, accompanied by elephants. They stopped in front of a small group of Arabs of the tribe of Azd, led by Prince Malik Bifam. The prince tried to persuade the Persians to live together, to share water and pastures. He said, "If you are willing to give me a part of Oman, I will settle in one area of the country and be grateful to you. If you're not willing to accept, I will stay against your will, and if you attack me, I will attack you, and if I win, I will kill your troops." Al-Marzuban refused Malik's proposal.
Oh no!
And the Battle of Salou was terrible. There was nothing to be heard but arms clashing and swords crossing. Malik was splendid in his brownish red tunic and a yellow turban on his head. That day, nothing could stop him. He killed Al-Marzuban, and the Persians turned back.
Yes, great Malik.
Now, in this beautiful evening, we are on the other side of the road, between Salou and Wubar.
Wubar, the door to the desert, the city of scent, the souk of all delicacies. Wubar, wealthy Wubar.
Why wealthy, Grandpa?
Because of the resin of the frankincense tree that was worth its weight in gold. It came from Wadi Dhokla, from theNej, from Wadi Hojar, and had to pass through Wubar. Here, the caravan stopped in search of rest and water. Wubar's walls were erected above an immense cavern, and among those empty walls resounded the echo of 1,000 idioms, music and stories from the edges of the world. Traders from India and the coast, traders from the desert, until the desert swallowed the city, making it the lost city of Wubar.
And this is the end of the story.
Stories admonish and teach, but they never end. They flow like the past towards the future and feed the present. You are too young to remember Oman before the time of Sultan Qaboos bin Said. There were no streets, no schools, no electricity and no hospitals. Then he came, a young man full of new ideas and hope, who had travelled around the world, a man of great credibility, perseverance. A great leader listens and does not just instruct, and this is just what he did. He listened to everyone, to those who believed in tradition and those who believed in change. In doing so, he led us on a path that both honours tradition and our people's legacy, but also forges ahead with Oman's renaissance and progress. Thanks to him and ordinary Omani men and women, our country is now prosperous and advanced, and our lives became easier. During his reign, many lost cities hidden under the ground, Ras al-Jins, Salu, Sumharam, and others were discovered and excavated, bringing us full circle with our ancient past.
As the ancient garden.
Better, a new garden within the desert.
Remember this hand of stories and let them be your strength. Be always united and understanding, and you will maintain, with the help of the Almighty, our country safe in your future.
Actually, I had two options, either to put this film at the beginning and I save you, all of you, to just to listen to me, or to leave it at the end. Thank you very much. I hope nobody has a question.
If there are questions, please ask them, and if not, we'll take a little break. Just for a few minutes, refill your cups, take some food, and then we'll start with the first panel. So thank you, Dr. Said. That was very exciting, thrilling, and thank you so much. I will begin now by introducing Dr. Kimberly Williams, an associate professor of anthropology at Temple University. Dr. Williams is a mortuary archaeologist, bioarchaeologist, whose current research is focused on the mortuary and landscape archaeology of southeastern Arabia. Her work focuses on questions about prehistoric mortuary ritual, funerary landscape formation and use, interred material culture, and archaeological human skeletal remains, all recovered through survey and excavation. Dr. Kimberly leads an ongoing work in Dunk, Oman, and she collaborates with archaeologists from Sultan Qaboos University at the Bronze Age site of Dhokla in northern Oman, which is located close to the coast and seaports at Saham and Sohar, north of the Hajar Mountains. Dr. Williams holds a PhD in anthropology from the Ohio State University. So, Dr. Williams?
Closer. So this morning I'm going to be talking about the site of Dhokla, located on the Batna coast in northern Oman. I first want to thank, of course, my colleagues who are not here, but who I rely on very heavily and who I collaborate with at this project. First, Dr. Nasser Al-Jawari, who is the director of this project, and Dr. Khalid Douglas, who is the head of archaeology at Sultan Qaboos University. So Dhokla is located approximately 24 kilometers from the coast, on the Batna coast. It's close to the seaports of Saham and Sohar. And you can see here, I think that this is, it doesn't do that, okay. So you can see Dhokla here, thank you. You can see Dhokla here in the red box. I want to start by showing you a few slides from a presentation that we gave 2 weeks ago. We were lucky to present 2 papers in Munich 2 weeks ago, my colleagues and I. The first paper was on the settlement itself, and so I can't really speak about the mortuary rituals until I give you a little background on the site. So I've borrowed some slides from my colleague's presentation to show you here. So the Dhokla sites are divided for convenience sake into 5 sites, as you can see here, DH1, DH5, DH6, DH7, and DH8. We've divided it this way out of convenience. There is a modern road that comes through the site, there are farms, and there's a wadi system that runs through. For the purposes of this talk, though, the mortuary rituals apply to the entire site. My colleagues 2 weeks ago focused on the remains at DH1, so you can see that here. This is the first part of the site that we've excavated. Overall, there's about 65 Umanar buildings at this site. At DH1, there are 17. Importantly, at all of the Dhokla sites, there are no towers, and this makes the Dhokla sites very interesting because that's not typical. All of the buildings are made of rough-hewn local stone. So just to give you a quick view of the excavation of one of the buildings, the plan, and to give you an idea of what it looks like afterwards, this is the largest building at DH1. This is this building called S10. We've come up with a preliminary chronology of use of the site. And so today we'll focus on the Umanar period, which runs roughly 2700 or 2500 BC to about 2000 BC. The site is clearly used for copper smelting, and there's an agricultural component as well. We have lots of good evidence. We have these burned palm date stones. This is pretty typical of inland sites. We've used these for C14 dating and also to infer aspects of the agricultural nature of the site. To remind you of how close the site is to the coast, this diagram I think does a nice job to show you how close it is to the sea. So you would imagine that we would have a lot of interaction with other cultures and with the coast itself. We can see this by the many different types of shells from the site. We have a large amount of evidence on the surface of slag crushing mortars from copper processing and fragments of furnace wall lining. Now, we've picked up hundreds of these from the surface. There's still, if you visit the site, there's still hundreds more. This is a very intensively used site for copper production. And of course, the mortars. Many pieces of copper byproducts on the surface. It's essentially carpeted by evidence of copper smelting. And some more here. So many archaeologists argue that copper production in Magan was exported outside the region and not used as much locally. At the site of DH1 and the other sites, which we have not published or presented on extensively yet, there's very little copper. Some archaeologists also argue that copper objects were precious, and so people may have been taking them and melting them down and reusing them. However, you would still expect to see some copper objects at any given site. We see very few. This hook you see is the single bronze object that we've seen in all of the Dhokla sites, which are quite large. Also in the tombs, which I will now talk about, we see very few copper objects. So our big question as a team is where did the copper go? Quickly, I want to also show you evidence of interregional trade. There's a large amount of Indus ceramics found on the surface and in excavation at Dhokla. In particular, there's an extremely large number of black slip jars. We're not sure what was transported in these jars, but there's a very large number, and so we can see there was intensive trade. More than 85% of the Indus ceramics at DH1 were black slip jars. Here's a photograph of a restorable jar. And this graphic that my colleague Khalid put together, showing the building of S10 and showing all of the jars, in the Indus black slip jars that we found inside the building. Of course, they're not whole any longer, they're broken, but they're restorable and all of the pieces were there. We're looking at this as potentially some evidence that they were storing items there. So on to the tombs. First, I want to give a very brief introduction to the period preceding the Umanar period, the Hafit period, early Bronze Age. During this time, on the hills all throughout Oman, you see stone cairn tombs, tower tombs. They're on high places. There's hundreds of thousands of them all throughout the Omani landscape. And here you can see evidence of one of the sites where I work, of the many, many tombs on the hills. You might find one person inside, you might find a few people inside, but primarily they're small-scale use. Another image of a site I work at, Al-Khubayb, near Dank, and of course the very famous Bat outline tombs, which are of the same type. My work has primarily focused on trying to find evidence of a transition between Hafit-type cairns and Umanar tombs. The Umanar period is known for its beautiful, communal, finely built tombs that are located in settlements or adjacent to settlements rather than on the hills. So today I will tell you about one of the tombs at Dhokla. We have two Umanar tombs at Dhokla. One is small and heavily robbed, and the other is large and completely undisturbed. To give you another view of the site, you can see right here is the tomb that I will be talking about. This is the site of the other tomb, and this is DH1. All of this area, also in the wadi, was used by the site, by the inhabitants of the site. So this is tomb 1 at Dhokla 7. This is after the clearance of debris over the tomb and prior to excavation. You can see a large number of wadi cobbles that were on top of the tomb. After 1 year, we excavated the first chamber that you can see here on the left. Your left, I think that's your left. And most of the white ashlar stones that would face these tombs that you would see from a distance were robbed, and this is very, very common. But there are some examples of lines of stones that are still in situ, in the sense that they're still in alignment, but they're pushed forward, and this is one of those lines of stones. Another exciting find for this tomb is this carved relief. These are known in other Umanar tombs, but they're not very common. We don't understand what it means. We don't know if this person is walking from us or walking towards us. We don't understand what it symbolizes. So, continuing with the excavation, the end of the first year, we're approximately here, and we know that the tomb has 6 chambers. It has a central corridor that allows communication between the chambers, and this is extremely important. I will discuss the importance of this in a moment. I won't bore you with all of these dimensions. Move on. The chambers are subterranean, as most Umanar tombs are. There is a good parallel with Mohayyat. However, the difference is that at Dhokla we have 6 chambers, and here we assume we have 8 chambers. This, of course, is a trench that disturbed part of the tomb. Very preliminary analysis of Tomb 1, because analyses will be ongoing this summer. There are hundreds of skeletal fragments inside just the single chamber that has been excavated fully. Everything is commingled and fragmented. So this means it's mixed up and broken into many pieces. It's in poor condition and in some cases in excellent condition, so a real mix. I can see evidence of burning of the bone and cutting of the bone. And again, this will be important in a few moments. A large number of archaeologically complete ceramic and soft stone vessels were recovered. And I want to highlight the material culture here. We found only this much bronze so far in the tomb. So like the settlement, we're finding extremely small amounts, and these are not large objects. These are very small, probably related to clothing or some sort of fastener. Moving on, I wanted to show you this soft stone vessel that we found, which is unique. This type of soft stone vessel itself is not unique. The lines, the circle dot, that's very typical of Umanar period. What is interesting is the carving of this animal. Right here, I have two views of it. I can't tell you more about it because I don't know what it is, where it's from, why it's here, but I'd like to show that to people in case someone might have an opinion, might see something I can't see. Moving on, at the end of the first season, clearing the outside of the tomb, I noticed a bone pit that had been dug next to the tomb. These are known throughout the Oman Peninsula, but not well understood. Only maybe 3 or 4 have been published. So finding this was very exciting. Here's an up-close view of what the bone pit looks like on the surface. Lots of broken, burned, fragmented bone, ceramic, soft stone, etc. A close-up, you can see here, I'm going to stand up again, burned bone here, and here, and here, and here. So we can see evidence of some type of burning event that happened. This is just what we saw when we first uncovered the bone pit. At the end of the season, I was faced with a big problem. In maybe March, April, there was going to be pretty heavy rains, and this tomb is located at a unique position on a hill. It's not the only Umanar tomb that's known to be on a slope, but it's rare, and I was very concerned that the tomb would slide off, or the bone pit material would slide off of the hill. So what we decided to do was to dig a drainage ditch around the tomb to protect it, or to try to protect it. So this is a photograph of that. We also dug a profile of the southernmost part of the trench. You can see here that the bone pit is cut into the bedrock. It's not a stone structure, it was cut into the ground. And here's a picture of the profile, a close-up picture of the profile. And from this, I can tell that there were several periods of use of this bone pit. And this is a unique finding because while many people have supposed this has happened and there's evidence of much later reuse of bone pits, it's been very challenging to document how many times these pits are used and why. So I was able to identify 5 loci. And so the next year we came back out and laid a grid over top of the bone pit and excavated the entire thing with brushes so that we wouldn't break anything, and so we could observe all of the potential articulations of human bone. This is the final product. And what I can tell you from a preliminary reconstruction of the cremation events, this was not a funeral pyre. We know that there were at least 2 centers of burning and at least 2 different depths. So quickly, remember locus 002 and locus 004. So at 2 different depths, we know that there were multiple periods of burning. We know there were multiple burning events. And what we can say is that the burning events were very hot in the center, but that these were not events that were meant to destroy the bone, to reduce it to ashes, but rather, my interpretation is that it was symbolic burning. The flames would reach out and touch the other bone, smoke some of the bone, other bone if you will, but it did not destroy the bone. So this is evidence of small-scale ritual burning at multiple times in the bone pit. This is important because many people interpret these bone pits as a maintenance of the Umanar tomb, where the Umanar tomb is used until it's full, a pit is dug, people are emptied out to clean the tomb, and this is just a garbage, essentially. But my interpretation of this is that this is actually the final portion of the burial ritual. So a very quick preliminary inventory of the bone pit. Important points are that there's no evidence of primary interments, which is different from, for example, sites at like Hilly. There's no evidence of any articulations, so no one was put into this pit until well after the mortuary ritual had been finished. The same type of archaeological assemblage with regard to ceramics and soft stone is witnessed as you would see in any other Umanar site. Very important though, only 6 beads were recovered from this bone pit, and by comparison, every other bone pit and Umanar tomb that is known has thousands of beads. So 6 beads is extremely unusual. We also have only these 2 pieces of bronze, so again, no bronze or copper fragments at all. We did have 1 unknown metal ring and 3 bronze rings, which is an extremely small number as well. The soft stone, as evidenced here, the ceramic, these are all typical, locally produced, and some imported materials. So quickly, we know from the settlement that regional international trade relationships between Oman and the Indus were happening at this site. This exchange intensified, and we have dated the peak of this exchange to the first half of the Umanar period through radiocarbon dating and the quantity of Indus ceramics on the ground. But is this visible in the mortuary archaeology record? Quickly, I want to show you some preliminary analyses of the ceramics found. We have evidence of imported or imported-like ceramics from both the bone pit and the tomb. Some scholars suggest that some of these types of ceramics were produced for export to the Oman Peninsula and maybe elsewhere. These may be examples of that. We have other evidence of imported or imported-like ceramics, perhaps that are stronger evidence for imports that are not specifically made for the exporting process. And we're very excited. We have also found this inscribed ceramic sherd from inside the bone pit in a secure context about 30 centimeters down. So it's not surface debris. And it has an Indus inscription here. The question is this an Indus ceramic? Is this something that came from Indus and was traded? Or is it something that was locally produced by people who were familiar with Indus script, and so was it made locally? Here is a comparison with a well-known sherd from Ras Al Jins. So again, there's a large quantity of copper produced at these sites, but there's 1 bronze hook found in the entirety of the Dhokla sites, and extremely small amounts found inside of the tomb. So where did it go? We don't have the answer to this question yet, but I want to think about this from the context of mortuary ritual. What I can tell you is that Umanar mortuary rituals here demonstrate, and elsewhere demonstrate, that there's a shift in how ancient people viewed the importance of the body in death. No longer are people putting their deceased loved ones in tombs on high places on mountains and leaving them there, but instead they're putting them into these large communal tombs that are central to the settlement. It implies a reorganization of the space where the living and the memory of the dead interact. I would argue that this is a culmination of the development of ancestor reverence, which began in the preceding Hafid period. There's a repeated processual interaction with the dead whereby the body is reduced to smaller and smaller fragments, sometimes resulting in the final placement of the dead in what we would consider an invisible bone pit, which has no standing structure to be seen from anywhere, which reinforces the importance of a common ancestral identity. Quickly, what Umanar mortuary rituals imply is that you have the construction of a monumental circular tomb. You need to make a decision about stone crafting, division of chambers. Will it be a single story or will it be a two-story unit? Will you have a carved relief? Next, you're inhuming a body or bodies. Where are you going to place the body? How are you going to place the body? You need to make a decision about the material culture you will inter with that body. Next, there's a manipulation of the body in the Umanar period. Sometimes bodies are pushed aside. Sometimes skeletons are organized by skeletal element. Sometimes they're moved into a new chamber. And at some point, the bone is cut. Next, inside the Umanar tomb, occasionally or always perhaps, there's burning of the bone, symbolic burning, not meant to cremate the bone into ashes. Next, there's transfer of the bones into a bone pit and the deposit, I would argue, of new mortuary goods in that bone pit. And this process is finished with the ritual burning on top. This shows you the sort of place of Dhokla with regard to other known Umanar tombs and bone pits. Nothing is known about the Batna, so this is a new contribution from that regard. Just to remind you of the interaction, the trade interaction between Indus and Oman Peninsula, and quickly, I'll summarize by saying the preliminary implications for Dhokla are that despite intensive trade and interaction with foreign goods and culture, there's a maintenance of an important processual ritual, which perhaps could be interpreted as the most important ritual that a society partakes in, how to handle their dead. But possibly, even though this ritual is maintained despite very heavy interaction with Indus people, there's just one modification to it, and that is a reduction in the interment of material wealth, which is more in keeping with the Indus practice of interment of the dead. But this speaks to the strength of cultural continuity on the Oman Peninsula, across the Oman Peninsula, during the Umanar period. I want to thank everybody, and I apologize for misspelling Mark's name.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I feel I've learned a great deal. Now, the second presentation is going to be made by two people. It's Surveying the Kardis Oman, a re-examination of the Bronze Age record at the Mira Governorate. And the two speakers will include Dr. Zenobie Garett, who is currently a visiting scholar in New York University's Department of Anthropology. As a landscape archaeologist, Dr. Garett explores how past groups organize themselves and perceive the landscape around them. She has worked in Peru, Ireland, France, Oman, and the US to explore the wide variety of living options available to humans and the unique social and environmental challenges involved in the maintenance of wherever people call home. In addition to her teaching duties, she has participated in both digital and hands-on outreach projects designed to engage the public in a media-friendly manner. Dr. Garett obtained her PhD in anthropology at New York University. I will also introduce her partner in the presentation. Eli Dollarhide is a PhD candidate in anthropology at New York University. His doctoral research focuses on mapping socioeconomic landscapes across settlements in Bronze Age Oman by utilizing geospatial techniques and ceramic analysis. Since 2013, he has completed fieldwork at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Bat, Oman, and the adjacent archaeological remains at Ameya, including leading the recent Mapping Magan survey. His research has been supported by the Digital Globe Foundation, the National Geographic Society, the British Foundation for the Study of Arabia, and the Center for the Study of Human Origin at NYU. Outside of Oman, Mr. Dollarhide has participated in archaeological research projects in Iraqi Kurdistan, Azerbaijan, England, and Virginia. Mr. Dollarhide holds a BA from the College of William and Mary and an MA and MPhil from New York University. So let's welcome both speakers.
All right, well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, and also to the conference organizers and our host, and what an inspiring room to be speaking in today. So we prepared some written remarks, and I think we're going to try and stick to them in an effort to keep to time. But we look forward to your comments and questions, I think, which we'll have time for after the panel is complete. So with that, let's dig in. We often think about globalization as a phenomenon unique to the modern world. Archaeological evidence, however, and texts from the 3rd millennium BC Middle East show us that long-distance exchange of goods and ideas has a much deeper history. One of the first archaeologists to explore the role of ancient Oman and southeastern Arabia more broadly in this interconnected world was the British prehistorian Beatrice de Carty. Much of her research focused on the interior of Oman and the modern Al-Dahra Governorate. As part of the larger archaeological survey project centered around the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Bat, we revisited one of de Carty's most prominent archaeological sites, Amla, last year. So in our time today, we'd like to take you all on a quick visit to Amla and reevaluate the site's significance in light of the past 50 years of archaeological research in Oman. First, however, I think we need a little bit of background information. So the mid-3rd millennium BC, also known as the Bronze Age, was a period of intensifying regional interaction across the ancient Near East. This map offers one potential view of how the region might have looked during this time, with territories labeled either by the names given to them in Sumerian cuneiform texts from Mesopotamia, or the names used by archaeologists to refer to particular material cultures. Importantly, this period is when the first cities appear in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, shown here as Maluha, and southwest Iran, or Elam. This time period also saw the development of new types of social organization in Oman and the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, shown here with its Sumerian name Dilmun, and its settlements along the Halel River Valley in Iran, shown here as Marhashi. These broad sweeping changes helped foster the movement of materials across an increasingly broad geographic and cultural area. So we know about Oman's role in this ancient Middle Eastern world through both cuneiform texts and archaeological research. The ancient texts written by scribes in Mesopotamia, an example of which you can see here on a tablet from the British Museum, record both trade transactions and military exploits, and refer to northern Oman and the UAE as the land of Magan. Two Akkadian emperors, Manishtushu and his son Naram Sin, also shown here, claim to have launched campaigns against southeastern Arabia, defeating the 32 lords of Magan. Another text references a governor of Magan named Nadu Beli, which further demonstrates the intense interest of Mesopotamian elites in this area, though historical bias and a tendency for Mesopotamian rulers to stretch the limits of truth cautions us against interpreting these records literally. Other texts and artifactual analyses further tell us that copper was exported from Oman to Mesopotamia on a large scale at least as early as 3100 BC. Slightly later, the darkstone diorite was also an important export from Oman into Mesopotamia, where it was often shaped into statues of rulers. Likewise, the people of Magan were actively involved in exchanges with other groups across the ancient Gulf region. Ceramics, weights, beads, and other objects of personal ornamentation, along with a host of other goods from the Indus Valley, are common artifacts at archaeological sites across Oman, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this shortly from Professor Kenoyer. Ancient Magan also had a close relationship with southeastern Iran, as demonstrated by similarities in ceramic technology between the two regions and the presence of stone vessels from Iran in many Umayyad period tombs. So to zoom in a little closer, our area of interest centers around the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Bat and Amla. So what do we know about ancient life within this region specifically? The chronology of early Bronze Age Oman is defined mostly by ceramic typologies and shifts in mortuary practice, like we just heard about from Professor Kim Williams. So there are two time periods that are culturally contiguous, the Hafit and Umayyad, which run from 3100 to 2800 BC and 2800 to 2000 BC via the chronology from Bat. Settlements in the interior of Oman were generally based around oasis environments, and evidence from several sites, including Hilli 8 and Bat itself, suggests a subsistence toolkit that included the cultivation of dates and perhaps some grains as well. Most settlements are best characterized as small towns and villages, and they're typically anchored by one or more monumental stone or mud brick towers. Bat itself, which I know we're looking forward to hearing more about this afternoon, is home to at least 7 of these towers. The function of these raised platforms, which run up to nearly 40 meters in diameter, remains somewhat mysterious, though analogies have been drawn between them and the medieval forts common across Oman's landscape today. Tombs, like those we've just heard about in Dhokla, form another major context for the region's Bronze Age. Hundreds of these monuments from the Hafit and the larger structures from the Umayyad period dot the landscape around Bat and its surrounding settlements. So one of the first archaeologists to explore these tombs and settlements was Beatrice Ducarty. In addition to being a champion of the prehistory of the Lower Gulf through her work at the British Foundation for the Study of Arabia, Ducarty was also an active field archaeologist. Her expeditions to the Middle East were largely self-funded and conducted during her own vacation time. So due to her limited time and resources, Ducarty focused largely on archaeological survey, limiting excavation to small trenches that sought to answer specific questions about ceramic chronologies. Her thorough surveys and their timely and really fast publication provided a vast array of information on the nature and extent of the Bronze Age record of the Gulf. Ducarty was a highly respected ceramicist, and we see her on this slide actually sitting at her ceramics desk and in the background on survey in Oman with a colleague. And she was particularly interested in what these ceramics could tell us about different connections between the ancient cultures of the Middle East. She was particularly concerned with the distribution of incised and painted grayware pottery, which led her to Arabia in 1968. She returned to Oman again in 1974 to explore the Bronze Age of the lesser-known interior of the country, beyond the Hajar Mountains. So the presence of Bronze Age archaeology in Oman when Ducarty was there was a relatively new concept. At Amla, she found a dense cluster of Bronze Age tombs and settlements, and their potential led her to conduct small excavations at 5 of the 16 sites she recorded. In 1976, she published her findings in the newly created Journal of Oman Studies. So like Ducarty, our research is interested in understanding ancient Magan's role within this larger Bronze Age world, and particularly the effects that these global interactions had within southeastern Arabia. In the winter of 2017, under the auspices of the Bioarchaeological project, we conducted a systematic survey of the region, of the Bronze Age region between the settlements of Bat and Amla, in order to better understand the relationship between Bat and its surrounding environs, shown here in the red box. During the field season, we recorded 475 archaeological features, dating from the Neolithic all the way up to the modern period, with a majority belonging to the Bronze Age. Around Amla itself, we found 148 new sites, most of them tombs, which yielded chronologically diverse pottery, and in one instance, a chlorite vessel. We also documented over 80 petroglyphs, like those shown here. Yes. In the immediate vicinity of Ducarty's survey zone that likely date from the Iron Age or late pre-Islamic period. As part of our survey around Amla, we revisited Dakarti's original sites. Her map is shown here on the left, and collected additional ceramics from the areas she identified. Almost 50 years have passed since Dakarti first set foot in Amla, and modern development has impacted both the recent and ancient landscapes of the village. To reconstruct Dakarti's survey, we combined high-resolution satellite imagery, on-the-ground fieldwork, and her published notes. Using geological features such as those circled here in purple, red, and green, as well as the coordinates of known Dakarti sites, including 3A, shown here in yellow, we were able to overlay her map on top of modern satellite pictures. We then extracted the coordinates of her remaining sites and conducted field visits to document their exact location and level of preservation. Our goal was to document Dakarti's sites with modern GPS coordinates, re-examine her interpretations in light of new research, and assess the preservation level of these sites. The next several slides offer 4 case studies, labeled here on Dakarti's map as sites 1, 3, 4, and 5, on how Dakarti's interpretations can be changed by recent research in the region. So starting then at site 1, Dakarti and her team identified a low mound with 3 cairns surrounding a central tomb. Though through comparison with the excavated tombs at Umanar Island off the coast of Abu Dhabi today and at Hilli, Dakarti dated these remains to the early Bronze Age. A small trench she excavated inside the larger tomb revealed inner and outer wall facings, constructed with fine white limestone ashlars typical of the Umanar period. During our visit to the site, we were able to identify the mound and the location of Dakarti's excavations. An analysis of the sherds she recovered from the initial excavation showed the tombs likely were first used during the early Umanar period, which runs from 2800 to 2500 BC, and the surrounding cairns belong to the early Iron Age, around 1300 BC. Several Iron Age ceramics eroding from the Umanar tomb suggest it was also reused for burials in the first millennium BC. Dakarti's initial excavations also recovered several incised grayware ceramics, a type now well known from Bronze Age tombs across the Omani Peninsula and from southeastern Iran. It seems likely these pots, shown here as the middle ceramic picture, were produced in the Indo-Iranian borderlands in the area now known as Baluchistan, and the reed hut architecture depicted in their incised designs hints at the deep integration of foreign objects and ideas across the Gulf. The third site identified by Dakarti and excavated by her as well is considerably more enigmatic. The publication of her survey lists 5 small mounds with many pottery sherds eroding out of them and a circular structure with a 6.5-meter diameter and cobbled floor. She suggests that each of the mounds might represent a small homestead and interprets the circular feature as the foundation for a palm frond or brushwood superstructure that's long since decayed. A reanalysis of the ceramics collected by Dakarti at the site confirms the domestic nature of the area, though now the mounds have been replaced by several modern homes and a nearby school. On our visit to the site, we collected many sherds of black slip jars, a Harappan-style ceramic vessel commonly found in Umanar domestic contexts. Using the ceramic chronology developed from excavations at Bat, it's now possible to further narrow this site's occupation to the middle Umanar period, from 2500 to 2200 BC. The function of this round cobbled structure is still more difficult to discern. Bronze Age domestic architecture is almost exclusively rectilinear, though it's often anchored by a round tower. Though the Amla structure is at least 10 meters smaller in diameter than any known Bronze Age tower, it's tempting to suggest that this feature was a compact version of this well-known Bronze Age type. The fourth set of archaeological features identified during Dakarti's survey consists of a series of rectangular structures and a large stone circle called initially by her a walled enclosure. In 2017, it's easy to draw parallels between this associated set of features and Bronze Age domestic areas across Oman. We can now reclassify Dakarti's walled enclosure as a characteristic tower, and the abutting rectilinear features bear obvious similarity to domestic structures at the Bat settlement slope and from architecture known from the nearby settlement at Ziba. Dating these structures, however, remains somewhat contentious, as Dakarti recovered only 4 sherds from the entire area, most of which were collected on the surface, rather than coming from more secure excavated contexts. and they all appear to date to the late pre-Islamic period onwards. A lack of sherds, though, is actually a common feature of early Bronze Age towers across Oman, so this absence of evidence might actually support a Bronze Age date for its creation. Across the wadi from Site 4 and its tower, Dhokla recorded a cluster of tombs and structures she labeled as Site 5. Dhokla excavated an Umanar tomb, shown here as Site 5A, where she recovered material including a carnelian bead and a chlorite box. She also noted the presence of rectilinear feature called Site 5B, and that stone robbers had heavily damaged nearby tombs and cairns. In 2017, we were only able to definitively locate Dhokla structure 5B based on her notes and the preserved distinctive outline of this feature. The remaining tombs and cairns recorded in the 1974 survey have been completely destroyed, including Site 5A. We were only able to find this site thanks to a large pile of white limestone chippings and a scatter of Umanar period pottery, in addition to its spatial relationship to 5B and other topographic features across the landscape. Unfortunately, Site 5 was not the only example of the challenges to preservation we encountered in the area. A rapid increase in the population of Amla over the past 50 years has witnessed a boom in housing and commercial development, which has at times encroached upon the village's archaeological heritage. New plots, shown here as concrete blocks highlighted in yellow, have been cleared for modern houses, which in turn have erased some archaeological remains. In other cases, long-term stone robbing has led to the destruction of not only the monuments themselves, but also their value as archaeological places. So although we've stressed here the tension between modern growth in Amla and the preservation of the archaeological record, this isn't to say that a halt on development is necessarily the answer. The goal of archaeological preservation, when done well, is not to stop modern progress or deny local groups access to new and better commodities. Often, archaeologically destructive forces, such as agricultural techniques and civil infrastructure, have a massive improvement and have a positive impact on the local quality of life. In cases where modern expansion and historic sites overlap, the key is collaboration and continued dialogue between heritage officers, researchers, developers, and of course, most importantly, local residents. During the field season, we were able to share several of our new finds with the Ministry of Heritage and Culture office at BOT. This has ensured their future protection by including them in national heritage zones. And this slide, this slide shows several of the signs now marking these areas. So, taken together, this research offers a new view of prehistoric Amla. The increased efficiency of satellites and GPS technology and our systematic methods allowed us to identify nearly 150 archaeological sites in and around Amla, a significant increase from Dhokla's 15. The location of these sites, most of which are Hafit period tombs, reveal a pattern increasingly familiar across Al-Dahra, with Hafit tombs occupying spaces on high ridgelines, overlooking early Bronze Age settlements and areas of agricultural potential. This corroborates earlier work in the Bot area done by Dr. Charlotte Cable that suggests these high elevation tombs in effect stood guard over areas of potentially valuable territory. Our analysis of Dhokla's excavated sherds and visits to the sites she recorded suggests that Bronze Age Amla was home to at least two distinct settlement areas, the structure surrounding the tower at Site 4 and the low mounds at Site 3. Rather than the pioneer homesteads that Dhokla initially suggested, Amla now registers as a full-on early Bronze Age settlement, complete with several Umanar period tombs. Perhaps of equal importance, however, is our ability now to refine the chronological sequence of Amla's occupation. 50 years of archaeology in Oman and the UAE since Dhokla's initial visit have made massive changes in our understanding of the region's prehistoric timeline. Amla emerges from these decades of research as a chronologically dynamic area, occupied from at least the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, or the Hafit period. Our ceramics work confirms that the site was occupied through the early, middle, and late Umanar periods, and through comparisons with sherds from excavated contexts at Bot. Beyond the Bronze Age, Amla appears to have also been an important area of settlement and burial during the Arabian Iron Age, a time period totally unknown during Dhokla's years of research in the area. Zooming out, it's possible to form a clearer picture of the relationship between the large conglomeration of settlement areas and tombs at Bronze Age Bot and surrounding settlements and cemeteries in the area. Amla is situated at the meeting of two wadis and doubtlessly served as an important junction of movement between Bat and places to the south and east. Our survey work in the rest of the region, our recorded sites are shown here with yellow dots, shows a distinct break in the Bronze Age features between Bat and Amla, suggesting separate areas of territory or at least influence, with hopefully this break visible on this slide by an absence of yellow dots in this area. Amla's sphere of connections, however, extends far beyond this area. The presence of pottery from southeastern Iran and carnelian beads sourced from the Indus Valley, both found in tombs at Amla, demonstrates the integration of even Oman's smallest ancient settlements into the interconnected Middle Eastern world. Though very much a part of this global ancient Near East, Magan looks remarkably different from the cities and kings that characterize the archaeology of many of its ancient neighbors. Instead, smaller settlements and towns, like Amla, that are surrounded and grounded by monumental architecture, such as the tombs and towers, are the norm. Across ancient southeastern Arabia, there's little evidence for hierarchy or social inequality. Continued research and preservation of the region's archaeological heritage can further our understanding of Oman's unique role in the history of the Middle East. And so with that, we'd like to say thank you very much to all the people listed here, and of course, the funders of our project, and perhaps most especially the Ministry of Heritage and Culture, and to the people of both Bat and Amla, who were very welcoming and tolerant of us often walking through their backyards to record archaeological sites. So thank you very much.
Dr. Zenobie Garett, since I introduced you both, I thought you were doing it together. Are you making a presentation?
Oh, no, that was, we were presenting that together.
Doing together. Oh, I'm sorry.
So we'll take turns fielding
Do it
questions.
in turns.
He has the better speaking voice, so.
I thought you were both presenting. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so Dr. Mark Kenoyer is the last speaker on this panel. And Jonathan Mark Kenoyer is a professor in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Wisconsin. He has been teaching archaeology and ancient technology since 1985. He has served as field director and co-director of the Harappa Archaeological Research Project since 1986. Dr. Kenoyer has worked on excavations and ethno-archaeological studies in both Pakistan and India, and more recently in Oman. He has a special interest in ancient technologies and crafts, socioeconomic and political organization, as well as religion. He's the recipient of the 2013 Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center Research Fellowship. He's the author of numerous books and edited volumes on the archaeology of South Asia and the Indus civilization. Dr. Kenoyer obtained his PhD in anthropology at the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Kenoyer?
Thank you very much for the invitation to present at this conference, and also for your introduction. It's really an honor to be here at the Library of Congress. It's a really phenomenal location, and I think that this is the perfect place for the first conference on Oman to be held. So thank you for making this possible. I would like to thank the Embassy of Oman for their support, and Her Excellency the Ambassador for taking the time to come for this important event. Also the Office to the Advisor to His Majesty the Sultan of Cultural Affairs, as well as Sultan Qaboos Cultural Center. So all of these organizations have been very supportive in my work in Oman. And before I want to begin, I also want to especially thank Dr. Saeed bin Nasser Alsalmi because of his support when I was in Oman working on collections in the ministry and also in the office of His Majesty's, the Sultan Cultural Center. The material that he presented already on Salut, I will be talking about a bit more. And I was very fortunate because the Italian mission to Oman allowed me to study these materials and work with them and collaborate with them. I have also, working with the Ministry of Heritage and Culture, Hassan al-Lawati and Sultan al-Bakri, with the very important colleagues who have been helping me work in Oman. There are many other organizations I want to thank. Government of Pakistan, Department of Archaeology, and the Archaeological Survey of India, because what I'm presenting today is actually a connection of many different regions, and by working in all of these regions, I've been able to amass some information that I think is unique, and I hope that it will stimulate more collaboration across these borders. Sorry. I also want to thank all of the different projects. I'm not going to go through them in great detail. Many of you are here, so thank you for your collaboration and help. And many more are not here, but they're working in many parts of the world. And I think that we really need to do more collaborative work in order to be able to understand the complexities of the third millennium interactions. You've already had a little bit of introduction to Oman and the history of the Middle East, but the Indus Valley has been somewhat left out of this. So I'm going to kind of recenter everything, and Oman is actually in the center of the map. So the center of the map is not Egypt or Indus Valley, it's right in the middle here where you see Oman is the center point of interactions between three of the major civilizations. And in some of my early maps you'll see in my presentation, I refer to this area as Muscat and Oman. It dates when I started studying, so back in 1970, that's what this place used to be called. It wasn't called the Sultanate of Oman, it was called Muscat and Oman. So my maps show the periods of time in which I've been working on this area. This area, known as Magan, was critical for interactions with the Indus civilization, and we've known this actually since the 80s, but I'm going to present that this actually goes back much earlier. And Dr. Alsalmi mentioned that there's 2-million-year-old stone tools in Oman. I'm not going to include the plus 2-million-year-old stone tools in northern Pakistan, but the question is, how do you have more than 2-million-year-old stone tools in Riwat near Islamabad, and in Jammu and Kashmir, and in Oman, and then also in Africa? And is it always out of Africa, or is it could be other kinds of interactions? And I like to always have arrows going both directions. So my presentation is going to focus on bidirectionality and not just one direction. The chronologies have already been presented, but I just want to focus on the time that I will be talking about is the period of time when we have urban developments in the Indus Valley and very large urban societies in Mesopotamia, the Umayyad period in Oman. But I'm also going to start very much earlier to the period of time that was just briefly talked about by Dr. Alsalmi about the lithic periods of the Neolithic, because that time period is when the first interactions are going back and forth. And I didn't realize it as much when I did my dissertation back in 1970s and 80s, but I did study the shells from a site called Mehergarh, which were excavated by the French Archaeological Mission in Pakistan. And Jean-François Jarige, the late scholar who studied this, and his wife, Catherine, allowed me to study their beads. And the shell beads that I was studying from Mehergarh, I noted that there were certain types of beads here that were not found on the Magan coast in Pakistan. And I argued that they might have come from across the Gulf in Oman. And I've spent the last 30 years trying to find evidence for these shell beads in the Magan area. They're not present. They're only found in Oman. So it's very possible that at 7000 BC, people going back and forth across the coast from the Magan coast to Muscat area or the Ras Al Hamra or Ras Al Jins were taking shell beads back across the Gulf to what is now Balochistan and then trading them all the way inland. And this type of interaction suggests that people on both sides of the Gulf were interacting very regularly. So when we talk about origins of pottery, and Dr. Sophie Méry has studied the pottery in Hili and in the Arabian Peninsula, she talks about traditions of ceramic traditions coming from Balochistan to Oman. I would argue that these are developing at the same time on both sides. And in archaeology, we always try to be the place where everything starts and everything spreads. And I'm going to be arguing that we need to look at both directions, and people are working in both sides of the Gulf at the same time. We also have recent evidence from excavations in Salut, as well as studies of the ceramics, that we have pottery from the period of time that is during the Hafid period, that is coming from, possibly from the Indus Valley all the way into interior Oman. Most of the focus has been on Harappan. This is the time of the Umanar. But now there's a one potsherd from Salut that we're studying. It has the style of pottery which we call Kotdijian, which indicates that it's possibly a much earlier phase of interaction began when people were coming to this region. Now the question is, why did they come? And everyone focuses on copper. But there's one thing that people forget about. The Indus Valley is the place where cotton originated. At Mehergarh, at 7000 BC, we have cotton. If you want to make fishing nets, if you want to make fishing lines, making them from date palm fiber is not very good, okay? But if you want to have nice, strong fishing lines, cotton is very good. So it's possible that textiles and fibers were being brought from the Indus Valley to this region very early, and we're hoping to look at that now from excavations at Ras Al Had. The period of time during the Hafid period, we still see the continuation of this type of shell. So this shell, which is called Engina mendicaria, is very common in Oman. It continues to be used in Baluchistan, in the Indus Valley. And then the Indus people develop a technique for making black and white stones that look like this. So they develop a technique for replicating the shell and making certain types of beads that are similar to the shell, but they're made out of an artificial material. During the period of urban development of the Indus civilization, we see the establishment of major cities, Harappa, where I work, Mohenjo-Daro, Ganveriwala, Dholavira. These are huge cities and settlements in the Indus Plain. The Indus Valley is surrounded by raw materials. They have more copper in the Indus Mountains than you can shake a stick at. You don't need to go to Oman for copper. But if you cut all the trees in your own area and you have no charcoal to smelt the copper, then you do have to go somewhere else. So we know that there was intensive copper smelting in Baluchistan, Afghanistan. Dasht-i-Margo means the desert of death. And this was the desert of death because they cut all the trees down and there's nothing there anymore. But it was a major copper smelting area. So my feeling is that the reason we see during the Harappan period movement of people from this area to Oman is because there were lots of trees in Oman. There were lots of acacia. There were lots of forests. And the people of Baluchistan said, we can go over there and we can get lots of copper very easily because they haven't used it. And this may have been one of the major instigators for people coming to this area and developing copper smelting during the Harappan period and stimulating copper trade. So if you go to Oman to get copper and you bring it back to the Indus Valley and everybody else has copper from Baluchistan and Rajasthan and other places, how are you going to sell it? Is it going to be cheaper? And the fact is, it is cheaper. Because if you go by boat from Baluchistan, from what is now Delta to Oman, you're going to sell cotton and rice, or not wheat and barley and everything else that you bring from the Indus Valley. You're going to make a huge profit, and your boat is empty, and you have to come back with heavy material. So you're going to bring a heavy boat filled with shell and copper back to the Indus Valley, and you can undercut the market of the people who came by ox cart from Baluchistan or by boat, or by carrying it from Rajasthan. So you'll be able to use maritime trade as a way to totally change the economy. And I think that this is one of the most important discoveries of our interactions between the Indus civilization and Oman is the development of maritime trade and global economies of production and exchange. So this is what I feel is happening during the Indus period, and then the question is, who was stimulating this? Were the people in Oman stimulating this because they needed things from the Indus Valley, or were there middlemen who would be Omani or Arab and Indus traders moving back and forth? And I would call them Magan traders because we don't know where exactly they came from. In the Indus civilization, we have cities made with fired brick and mud brick. We have organized transport with ox carts. We have beautiful beads made of carnelian, seals, weights. And one of the features that we see in the Indus cities is that people were wearing bangles, ornaments. And every woman in the Indus Valley was wearing bangles, and many of the men were wearing bangles. And we have lots of beads, and so these types of ornaments and things were being used and worn by the Indus people. But the Indus people were also making a wide range of ceramics. And they made these ceramics for special reasons. So these large vessels have been the main focus for the trade to Oman, which are the black slip jars. We've heard about them again and again and again. The question is, what was put in a large jar? And based on my ethnographic studies and historical studies of trade between South Asia and China, I argue that everything is put in here. It can be foodstuffs, it can be textiles, it can be anything that you do not want to get wet with salt water. So if you're taking stuff from the Indus Valley to Oman, you don't want the salt water on it, and you don't want the rats eating it. So there could be textiles and fiber inside these pots, there could be dried goods, there could be wet goods, and we need to analyze these. So right now I'm working with the Ministry of Heritage and Culture. We're taking some sherds from recent excavations in Ras Al Had with the Italian team Maurizio Catani from Ravenna, and we are working on the residue analysis of these vessels to find out what's in them. We also have beautiful painted vessels, which are highly decorated. Now, in an Indus site, you will find one or two of these, one thing more. So black slip jars in the Indus Valley, they're found in every settlement. And you can ask me, why don't we do residue analysis of black slip jars in the Indus Valley? Well, in the Indus Valley, after they had a black slip jar and they traded it to Harappa, they took everything out of it, and then it's like an empty bottle. And in Indus Valley, they took these vessels and they used them as latrines. So they buried them in the ground, and then they used them as a latrine. So I don't want to study the latrine contents of every house in Mohenjo-Daro. We rarely find a black slip jar that has been used for trade, because every time they use them, then they put them in the ground and use them as a latrine. So I know what's in a latrine, but I want to know now what's shipped out of the Indus Valley in these vessels. And they didn't use them as latrines in Oman. They used them, they accidentally broke them. You saw them in Dahwa. I went to that site and I saw all of the sherds. It's phenomenal. So Oman is the only place we can actually study the contents of black slip jars properly. Then we have vessels which are beautiful painted vessels, and these things, only one or two are found in each Indus house. They're not made in very many copies. So these, I think, were used for rituals and ceremonies and marriage ceremonies. So then when we find them in Oman, the question is, why are they in Oman? We also find what we call handi. Handi is a cooking pot specifically made for cooking tiles of Indus Valley food. Now, we don't know what the food was, probably barley or wheat, a gruel, and curry. We know they used turmeric and spices in the Indus Valley, so these would have been made for making biryani and curry. And then we find lots of these in Oman. We also find dish on stands, which are presentation vessels. So this is a style of cooking that you make certain foods and then you present it in a certain way on a very high stand, which is a part of an Indus food ritual. And then finally we find vessels which we call perforated jars. And in the Indus Valley, when we found them in situ, they're always found inside a very large jar. And this, I argue, is called a reverse strainer. It's used for making types of beer or barley drink, which is a special type of beverage used in the Indus Valley. So Indus people developed a wide range of food traditions and ceramic traditions, which we're going to look at and how they come to Oman. And the Indus people use lots of bronze. They're probably the most bronze-using civilization in antiquity. Everybody had bronze, because they have copper from all sides and now from Oman, and everybody was using bronze to make pottery, or to make vessels, weapons, tools, ornaments, seals, necklaces, plates, everything. So bronze is very useful, because if you put water in a bronze vessel, it will kill the bacteria within 4 hours. So people who had wealth could have bronze vessels, and these would help to keep them healthy when they were drinking liquids. So here we come now to Oman. So early scholars working in Oman found evidence of Indus interactions at the tip of Oman. The first discoveries were at Ras Al Jins by Clouseau and Tossi, and then some were found in Hili during the early excavations, and then later on, people realized that there were lots of inland sites, and now we have sites on the Batina coast. So basically, all over this peninsula is evidence for Indus interaction. But they did not have ox carts, and they did not have camels. And so how do you get a big black slip jar all the way into Salut or into Bat? You had to carry it. Because we don't have any evidence that they were using donkey transport or carrying these things on donkeys. And one of these vessels can hold 84 liters of liquid. That's a lot of weight. So it would have been very difficult to move these things inland. But they were doing it, and we have evidence of those materials all through the inland areas. So you've already had an introduction about the Uman-Nar period. One of the things that is important about Uman-Nar burials is that within the burials they have very elaborate ornaments. Some of these ornaments are from clearly the Indus civilization, but I want to point out that some of them are actually from Anatolia or from Mesopotamia, and indirectly possibly even from Egypt. So Oman was a nexus. It was a place where people were coming from many different regions, and the elites were using these symbols as a symbol of their power and connection. My recent work in Oman, funded by the Sultan Qaboos Foundation, helped me study materials from Bidbid, from Bat, from a lot of different sites that I'm in the process of publishing, which shows that some of these beads were coming from the Indus Valley directly to Oman. Some of them may have been made in Mesopotamia and then come to Oman from Mesopotamia. And recently, this year, we found my first bead that I can say of carnelian or a hard stone that was actually probably made in Oman. So the question is, when did the different technologies develop and how were these communities interacting? I was able to study the seals, some of these seals from Mysar and also from Ras Al Jins. Omani craftsmen were using their own techniques to make their own style of seals, which is distinctive. They were not copying Indus Valley seals. There may be some shared motifs, but they had their own way of doing things. And then we have the important seal from Salut, which it's an Indus-style seal, but it's not made in the Indus Valley. And my analysis of this argues that it was made by an Indus-trained craftsman, somebody who has the skill of an Indus seal carver, but they were making it on chlorite. The chlorite, we don't know, maybe Mike Carroll will tell us about chlorite. It could have been from somewhere in Oman, or it could have come from Iran, or it could have come from Yemen, but it wasn't an Indus stone. But they were using this stone to carve an Indus seal, so it has some slight imperfections because of the tools, but clearly made by somebody who is highly skilled. So this means that I'm a trader, I'm in Oman, I don't have a seal, I call somebody to make my seal using a local material, which indicates a very unique interaction system. And this is one of the earliest sites where we have the evidence for Mesopotamian and Indus interaction discovered by Tosi and Clouseau. And then the work by Sophie Méry and Clouseau. And then most recently, Sophie Méry and I have been collaborating to look at pottery from Salut and also from Ras Al Had. And she's arguing that some of this pottery is actually made in Oman of Indus style. Now, I've worked with potters in Pakistan for 30 years. And trying to get a modern potter to make an Indus-style pot is very difficult because they're Punjabi or they're Sindhi or they're Baluchi and they're used to making those types of pottery. It took me 15 years to train a Harappan potter who makes modern Harappan pottery, Punjabi pottery, to make a black slip jar. So to get a potter in Oman who's used to making certain types of pottery to make a black slip jar would have taken many, many years of experimentation with the clay, with the technique, before they could finally make this vessel. Another solution would just bring a potter from the Indus Valley and bring them to Oman and then say, here's some clay, and then they can make it. Or they're going back and forth, yes. So this is the interesting patterns that we're trying to understand. So this is where, working with Chris Thornton and Charlotte Gable, we were able to look at the materials from Bat. We were also able to look at the materials from Salut. We were analyzing this pottery using neutron activation. And now we're finding some interesting patterns that some of this pottery looks very similar to the clay from Gujarat. So Gujarat is an important area of trade between the Indus Valley, and I'm not presenting the results here because we're still in the process of analysis. Our recent excavations from Ras Al Had, which is a small little seaport settlement. I mean, it's not a settlement, it's less than a hectare in area. It's where they got the stuff off the boats and they sat by the beach and barbecued some fish and then sent stuff inland. And we found a perforated jar fragment here. So they were making beer or barley, sattu we call it in Urdu, a special barley drink using this reverse strainer at the beach near where these ships were coming. And we also found a goblet fragment. This type of goblet of the Indus Valley was only used in the big cities. It was never used in the small settlements because it's a disposable vessel. You go to the shop, you buy some lassi or you buy some beer, you drink it, you throw it away. Why would somebody carry a disposable cup from Mohenjo-Daro all the way to Ras Al Had? And the only suggestion that I have is that they wanted to keep a memento. They had been to the big city, they brought this back to show their family back in the other side, and they brought it there, and it broke. So they get it all the way back to Oman, and then it broke. So we found the sherd of this in Ras Al Had. So the question then is, pottery like this, why would somebody bring elaborate wedding ceremony vessels to Oman? Probably because they want to get married, or they're bringing somebody who they want to give this to as a gift. We also have evidence of toys. So salut is so important because we have Indus-style toys. This is a pottery disc made from Indus pottery, only found in the Indus Valley. And you stack them up and you throw a ball at it and you play a game. We find Indus whistles. This is a bird whistle from salut. So these are children's toys. So this means that people who are living in salut are acculturating their own children into traditions that are relating to the Indus Valley. So then, why are they coming? I mentioned this a bit earlier. They're getting copper, they're getting shell, and probably many other things which we still need to study. And they're bringing these things to the Indus Valley to show exotic materials from this other region. In return, materials are coming from the Indus here. The question is, who are the people coming? Are they Magan traders going to the Indus and coming back? Are they Indus traders coming to Magan? And if they're from the Indus Valley to Magan, we don't find any shell bangles here. So either the women are coming and they're taking all their bangles off, or the women are not coming. Because in the Indus Valley, every settlement has filled with bangles. And there's not a single bangle in any archaeological site in all of Oman except for Ras Al Hamra at 3700 BC. So no bangles are being used. So this is the next mystery, is what is happening to the bangles in Oman? And who are coming there and what are they doing? In Mesopotamia, we have bangles from the Indus Valley. In Susa, we have bangles. In Sarazam, we have bangles. We have bangles in everywhere else, but not in Oman. So in summary, we have evidence for really important domestic ritual Indus-style pottery at both coastal and inland sites, maybe made by Indus or Indus-trained potters, used by Magan or Indus traders, who preferred to eat food that was cooked in Indus-style pottery. They didn't want to eat it roasted, they didn't want to eat it raw, they wanted to eat it cooked in a handi and prepared and served in a certain way. They wanted to drink beer or lassi or sattu, prepared in Indus-style pottery. We also have evidence of carnelian beads, some of them possibly made locally, and then Indus seals carved with local techniques. So I'm going to leave you with this question. We have a lot more work to do, but I think we have some very interesting exchanges now between Oman and the Indus Valley, and I'm hoping that the video can be remade with Indus Valley with some component, because it's not just Mesopotamia and Egypt that are linking with Oman, but the Indus Valley is a very important place. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Kenoyer. And now the floor is open for questions. We have about 20 minutes for questions. So, what's happening?
Hello, is it, okay, my sincere thanks. Ms. Williams, I'm curious about the degradation of your sites. If you come back every year, how do you find your sites that you have worked on, and how much work do you have to get to get them to how you left them, if that is a valid question? I don't know.
We backfill all of our tombs and buildings. And so when we come back, we have to remove the backfill. In some cases, there is no backfill, and only in cases where the structure is secure.
So, questions?
There's one over here.
Yeah, hi. The question is for Dr. Mark Kenoyer. Can you tell us something more about the political administration in these two different regions, and specifically what kind of taxes and tariffs, if any, were they imposing on each other? Did they try to regulate the trade?
Between Indus and Oman?
Correct.
So the Indus cities were ruled by a corporate rule where we don't have a single ruler, and the cities had walls around them. Anybody coming into and out of the city was probably taxed. We have a very standardized system of weights in all of the cities in the Indus Valley. Some of those weights have been found in Oman and in primarily the sites in the UAE. So we know that some traders were coming with weights into this area and were using that same weight system. We also have Mesopotamian weights that may have been used in some kind of exchange. But as far as we know, we don't have very much details about how the settlements in Oman were ruled. We have towers. We're still trying to figure out what those towers were how they were functioning, whether it was with a clan or a clan leader. So the question is, this is a very good question. We don't know for the Oman side. We do know for the Indus side. We know that Mesopotamians were coming here to get materials, and they talk about themselves, they're trying to conquer the regions. So I imagine that it was a bunch of separate little polities spread into these different areas with a big stone tower as one of the main centers, and then, you know, alliances were made between them. But we don't have any evidence of a rulers' names or very large population centers. They're relatively small. So one of these stone towers can fit into the corner of one neighborhood of Harappa. So they're not very big. So Harappa is over 150 hectares in area, multiple mounds. Mohenjo-Daro is 250 hectares or 300 hectares. So they're huge cities. And then these settlements are relatively small compared to that.
For Dr. Williams, can you hear me? First of all, thank you very much for a wonderful panel. Dr. Williams, for you, I had a small question. You showed one little engraving of a human figurine. I was curious what the hollowed out hearts would mean. I was quite curious. It was very beautiful. That's one question for you. And then for Dr. Kenoyer, is that how you say your name? Question regarding the connection potentially with the Shahr-e-Sukhte and Jiroft, pre-Persian sites in what is now Baluchistan. What kind of connection do you think there is with both India as well as with Oman? Also, Magan and Makran. Makran is the historic name for Baluchistan, and I'm curious if Magan and Makran have any connection linguistically. Thank you.
Should I take it first? The carved relief with the small circular depression on the chest of the individual, we're not actually sure that's part of the carved relief. It may be. We've had a lot of conversation about this. It is real. There is a depression there. It is circular. There are shell pendants, if you will, and other pendants made of different material that are found from around that period. It is possible that it's meant to symbolize something like that. It's also possible that it's a luck of erosion.
Okay, the connections Magan and Makran, Majan, okay, so these are terms which are, we can hear them in modern languages. I'm sure that most people know that Gwadar used to be part of the Sultanate of Oman until 1962 or something like that, right? So this was controlled by Oman. The Sultanate had control of that coast. And our evidence that we have people going back and forth from 7,000, and I worked in the site called Balakot, which is just 55 kilometers from Karachi, and my student worked in Buleji, which is near Karachi, and the smugglers are going back and forth every day by boat. If you need something, you can get it from Dubai in one day. or 2 days, you know, because these areas are not that far apart. So I don't think we can really differentiate Magan and Makran. I kind of group them together. And I think they're important to think about as both sides of the same sea body, people interacting. Many of my friends in Baluchistan have family in Muscat, and people vice versa have family in Baluchistan. So it's something that has been going on for 7,000 years.
I have a question for the whole panel. When one looks at civilizations, ancient civilizations, there are certain characteristic features that define a civilization at any point in time. As you were looking at your excavations, are you able to, at this stage, I know it's an early stage and you're all digging there, are you able to elicit certain characteristic about the civilization, the culture, something that defines it in terms of the region that you could say, aha, this is this type of civilization? Any of you can answer.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I think, yeah, that's a difficult question because there's also lots of issues, as always, in archaeology with preservation. But I think one of the key differences between ancient Magan or ancient Oman and its surrounding areas, and I think it's also important to remember that Magan is a name given to the region by Mesopotamian people, by the cuneiform texts. So we don't actually know that people living within Magan referred to themselves as the people of Magan. But one of the big differences is there's so little evidence for social hierarchy. So especially when you compare it to Mesopotamia and what's happening in Elam in Iran, where there's massive cemeteries where people were actually sacrificed to be interred with their rulers. We have nothing like that in ancient Oman. And instead, it seems like there's a real emphasis on kind of community togetherness. And we see that in the tombs because while there are these kind of elite objects like objects of personal ornamentation from Harappa and also really nice stone vessels that are coming from Iran as well, they're not specifically interred with any single individual. Instead, they're just placed in the tomb at whole. So I think that's an important feature that differentiates Magan from its neighbors.
From other places.
Yeah.
Would any of you like to add something?
I have nothing. I agree with him.
Go ahead.
I'll follow up, but we do see as time goes on that changes a bit.
Sure.
So as we move from the Hafid period, we start to see people interred with specific objects just for them. And then we move into this time where individual identity is entirely removed by the breaking of the bodies. And what's interesting is that if you go down to Ras Al Jins, or if you go all the way into the furthest parts of the Emirates, go to Umanar Island, you see the same exact mortuary ritual. So that's something that there's a cultural continuity in that on the northern part of Oman that despite the onslaught of people coming from many different civilizations, they maintain that.
I would just add that the presence of seals with what could be some form of possible writing is a very important indicator of individual ownership and power that links certain individuals in Oman and the sites that have been found in Mysar and Salut and other places and Ras Al Jins that show that they are appropriating a form of identity that is used in Mesopotamia, in Iran, in Indus Valley, but using it from a stylistic and a cultural perspective that's their indigenous one. So they're not copying Indus Valley seals, they're not copying Mesopotamian seals, but they are using chlorite, which some of it is actually reused vessels traded from Iran that have been broken, and it's so nice and soft and beautiful to carve that it's easy to carve, and you use one of those to make a seal. But they're doing it with an indigenous style. So that's the stuff that I was able to study which really showed a local style of carving which is totally distinct and indicative of local elites. Because you don't make a seal to stamp something if you don't have something to control. So there are some people there who are appropriating that.
Okay. Questions?
Two quick questions, if I may. The first to Dr. Williams. You hinted at a more significant meaning for the corridor in an Umilnar tomb beyond perhaps a practical passage. So I was wondering if you could say something about that. And then the second question is for Mr. Dollarhide. You had made reference to the approximate dating of the petroglyphs that you found to, I can't remember, earlier mid-Iron Age. And so I was wondering if you could just say something about how you determine that date. Thank you.
So with regard to the corridor, there's evidence in Umilnar tombs that the body was interred and then taken apart, and pieces were organized by skeletal element in different chambers, potentially moving through the different rooms of the tomb. Some of the tombs do not have multiple chambers. Some of them have multiple chambers, but they can't communicate, so there's no way to get into the other chamber without going up and over the wall. This tomb has a corridor, and if this is something I'm working on now, so I'll be brief, but if we think of Neolithic barrows and long mounds in Western Europe, and think of the theory behind the development of chambered tombs and very similar actions of moving bodies between these chambers over time related to mortuary ritual that we can't put our finger on. I think that this is a similar situation because of the evidence of movement through the chambers. And so since Dhokla's tomb has this central corridor that allows communication to all of the chambers, I think we may be able, and because it's a closed context, I think we may be able to consider that a little more deeply.
Yeah, and then about the dating for the petroglyphs. So that is, of course, a very difficult thing to do because there's no artifacts that we can directly associate with those petroglyphs. However, right next to that, so those all those petroglyphs were spread over 5 wadi boulders, and immediately adjacent to that was a large Iron Age cemetery area. And also on the petroglyphs themselves, there's lots of weaponry that looks similar to objects found from the late Iron Age or early pre-Islamic period. So we're not certain about that dating, but it seems that that's likely. And also, if you look at comparanda of petroglyphs with that same motif, which does show up all across southeastern Arabia, they're often very, very close to late Iron Age or early pre-Islamic features. So that is somewhat contentious, definitely. And I will just say, and there are camels, domesticated camels in the petroglyphs as well. So we definitely know that it's no earlier than the Iron Age.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.